everyone. I guess we're a gaming channel now, just with zero appeal of a real gaming channel. It is Shirley.
And Rachel, and this is Podcasa Bonita, your new favorite gaming channel.
Where we actually don't play games, and we just talk about them, but instead of games, we only talk about two games, and both of them pertain to South Park. So, yeah, gaming channel for the win. Yes, everyone, and welcome to Podcasa Bonita, as Rachel just said. Today is our review, kind of review / discussion on the Fractured Butthole, the second game, kind of in. I guess there are only really like two, but they're the ones that Matt and Trey actually worked on.
So I'm gonna just jump right in with the story overview, because that's the only part of this that I care about. I'm not even pretending to be a real gamer after I just introduced this as a gaming channel.
I'm a hella intense gamer. I've got like nearly 300 hours put into Animal Crossing New Horizons and about 600 put into City Folk from 5th grade. So, you're talking to a real gaming pro here.
Actually, you're right. I play Candy Crush and The Sims 4 almost religiously, so I think I am a gamer.
Tom Nook has become my bitch, so, Same with Matt and Trey, because we just roast them so frequently.
Although, this will be a very different video, because I believe, for the most part, we like this game. Now, getting into the Fractured Butthole, this is, as Shirley said, the sequel game to the Stick of Truth, but it has that really nice storytelling where you don't have to play the previous game to understand what's going on in this one. The only part of it that it kind of links over is that it's like the next day in town and the new kid's still like running around with the Stick of Truth costume, but all the boys are playing superheroes now, so he's nobody again, and he has to kind of climb the ranks and do all the quests all over again. And so this game revolves around the boys and their fight over this superhero conflict, where they both sides of the team want to make as much money as possible, so they can get chicks and stuff like that. And they end up having a fight over how to I don't know how to describe it.
Establish a cinematic universe. So
yes.
That's kind of the main focus of the boys, is to establish this cinematic universe with their superheroes. And if you think that's a little bit of an exaggeration with its parody, it's not, because Hanna-Barbera, like literally the Scooby-Doo ass bitches, are trying to set up a cinematic universe with their properties. So, but yeah, continue with the story.
I mean, that's really the main thread of the whole game. There's other subplots where, there's, a drug cartel in South Park. There is a Cthulhu monster that only eats black people. There is time travel. There's Mitch Connor. There's a lot going on, but somehow it all ties in.
Mm-hmm. Like we said, the superhero arc and the fight between the two groups is the primary, storyline, but, ultimately, there is a Mitch Connor theme that shows itself towards the third act of the game that kind of ties everything together. And with the story, this one, I will say, is slightly weaker than the Stick of Truth. Now that I look at it, I didn't think it really was, upon first glance, but it is a little bit weak. But really only in, the third act is it kind of just, messy. But it's kind of forgivable when you look at, my favorite part of the game, which is the actual gameplay. This game absolutely shines with its format and with its mechanics, because it really it improves upon the mechanics of the first game, which we'll get into when we compare and contrast the two towards the end. But the mechanics, like I said, you can play this one apart from Stick of Truth. I played this before I ever had the Stick of Truth, and the Fractured Butthole to me is one of the best games I've played. But my experience has been Nintendogs and Animal Crossing, so I don't know how great, but generally reception wise, This has been, really, really awesome. Most fans, especially, will appreciate the game because, like the first game, it has a lot of really fun Easter eggs in it.
I can't really speak to the mechanics of this game because I have not played a single minute of it. Stick of Truth, I at least played some of it. I played like halfway through. This one, I haven't played it at all yet. So it's kind of interesting though because Shirley kind of was talking about like the gameplay and the mechanics and how they were much improved from the first game, and that's why she likes it better because she kind of values that in the game. But I like Stick of Truth better because I think the storytelling is better, and that's what I care about.
It's a really, really tough decision because it's not like I like the Fractured But Whole infinitely more than the Stick of Truth. They're both really wonderful games, but I will say the mechanics and the gameplay is what's like really, really elevated in this game. So again, like the first one, you do have a turn-based style game, very similar to Pokemon and shit like that. But now you can move around. You're not stationary like you were in the first game. Your abilities and your attacks have to do with your surroundings. So you have to move in that space, in that battle space. So it can affect, pushback and hitting other opponents. So that's a really awesome mechanic that they added into this game that also appears. It actually becomes like a really challenging part of the game as much as it is a benefit for the game because a lot of the boss battles revolve around moving along your space and and avoiding obstacles. So you have three battles that I can think of at the top of my head that utilize this mechanic as a challenge. You have your spontaneous butte, where you have to move across your grid in a certain amount of time before spontaneous butte gives a beautiful butt slam and kills you on impact. You have the Shrub Neoroth thing, which is the only one that I can't actually beat. I have to get my sister to do it for me. And then I play the rest of it. And then you also have a wonderful lava battle with Lego bricks with Professor Chaos. So really like improved game mechanics, I'd say, in this one.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I actually, again, have no personal experience of this, so I'll have to take your word for it, but it does seem like Matt and Trey really stepped their game up when it came to, like, making an actual game, so props to them for that. As far as reception goes, I am not very active in any gaming communities, even if it's South Park, so I don't know, Shirley, do you know what, like, the general consensus is among the fans, which game is preferred?
In general, they have around the same ratings, but I will say again with the upgraded mechanics in this game, this one has been the more universal favorite. From what I've seen in just a few gaming communities, they're very, very similar in favoritism. Both of them have very, very good scores. They're a very good price range as well. And it does cater more to like a South Park fandom. So of course, like if you're more of a fan of South Park in general, you'll probably have a little bit more favoritism towards these games. But so far, I don't know if there's like a really big drastic difference in which one is preferred. This game in particular, I think, may have higher reviews because its gameplay is a little bit more advanced. They've added things to it. So, and what's awesome is, like we've said before, they can be completely independent of each other. You do not have to play one in order to understand the other, which I think is really, really awesome. I think you should, if you enjoy one, you'll enjoy the other because they're similar enough to still get the same vibe and experience, but they have enough differences in them that they do feel like different gaming experiences. They feel like different storylines. You feel like you're being challenged in some ways versus others. There are also, I think something that's really great about this game mechanic-wise is the use of partners, because you could use them in the first game as well. but now you have to have similar to in the first game. You have to use certain party members. You have to use like certain characters in order to pass certain obstacles. So that's something that they kept, but they revamped in a superhero-esque way, and they added new characters as well, which is a really awesome experience.
So, do you have any other gameplay opinions? I mean, I know you talked about mechanics, but
Gameplay wise, again, I think this one is slightly stronger because you do have roughly around the same mini games. I think there are actually more like variety in your mini games. In this one, you have like a quick little rhythm game. You have kind of like a Flappy Bird parody with Kanye West riding a unicorn in this game. So you do have side quests. I think there are roughly around the same amount of side quests per game. This one has a lot of really fun ones, but the thing is, what I really love about this game as well, which I think is a big improvement in general, and probably a reason why this one has slightly better reception, is the ability to customize your character even further. You can choose the gender and the sexuality identity of your character. And the thing is, it's very vast, it's very inclusive, and people may laugh and say that it's ridiculous, but they did their research, and it's very inclusive and has accurate definitions. So, props to Matt and Tricks. It's a very awesome part of the game that I think the first one lacked a little bit. There really is like a personalization that you can have in the Fractured Butthole.
And don't they also have that gag at the beginning where, depending on your skin color, it decides if the game's easy, medium, or hard?
That one is just an audio gag. It's not actually where Cartman says, choose your difficulty level, and the darker your skin is, it says more difficulty. He's like, this won't actually affect your gameplay, just every other aspect of your life.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Very bold. So no, it doesn't actually affect your gameplay, which a lot of people miss. Because they're so, like, shocked by it. I've seen a couple playthroughs where people are so shocked where they're just like, they miss Cartman saying this doesn't actually affect your gameplay. So they'll go like, oh, well, I don't want it to be too hard. I guess I'll just go for this, medium toned skin.
Yeah.
But, and you can also be a girl. And the thing is, your identity will affect how you're treated by other characters. Not necessarily your difficulty level, but Cartman will have different little quips to say towards you if you play as a female character, or a trans character, a non-binary character, than if you were a supposed boy. So there is the gag and the humor is still completely there in this game as well.
I really appreciate the, like you said, diversity of like the skin color and the gender and the sexual orientation, because for me the whole idea of an RPG game is that you want to like pretend it's like literally you in this world that you love. So the more you get to customize it, it's like the more you get to pretend that it's actually you.
Exactly. And I really like that you're not limited to certain things. You can even pick a religion in this game, which is freaking just awesome. There's a you'll have a couple of battles where your identity is like brought up and everything. So I agree 100%. There's something about this game that allows you to be a little bit more personal with it, which I think is a really great benefit.
So before we move on, I want to talk about one part of the gameplay that I don't have experience with, but I love. I watched the Let's Play on YouTube, and it is the side quest where the new kid goes to Casa Bonita. I almost said Podcasa Bonita. To help Kenny because he's worried that his sister has been kidnapped by the vampire kids. And so you and Kenny show up, and Kenny's in full Mysterion garb, and then the goth kids are there, and they show up and help you, and there's a whole funny gag about how Mike the vampire kid, it's his birthday or something, and then his stepdad keeps referencing the Lost Boys, which is like one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time. I was so happy to see a reference, and they really were kind of goofing on it, but like in such a cute way. And I was just very, very happy. It was like a whole big blend of all my favorite things in one. Like Mysterion, Goth Kids, Casa Bonita, Lost Boys. Man, Trey really did me solid on that one.
So, you know, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because that brings me into the next talking point, which is the DLC, because that's not at that section that you were talking about is actually a DLC extra kind of level. So it's not available if you just purchase the game just on its own. So there is that quest.
I did not know that.
Yeah, if you had done your research or actually played the fucking game, you'd know. But no, it's actually not. Hopefully, not to disappoint anyone. That and the Lake Titicaca side quests are both downloadable content. There are that you can have with the DLC. I know I got with the DLC. I got both of those. There's a kind of like training simulation thing that you can have that's incredibly difficult, so I don't really play it. And you can also, I also got a digital download of the Stick of Truth. So I play it on the Switch, but I think the DLC is available on any platform or any console that you use. But I think that's another great thing about this game is the DLC is fantastic. It's probably a little bit unfair to say that it's my favorite part of the game, because it technically isn't, you know, in the final product of the game just by itself. You do have to download it and pay extra money unless you get it in a package deal. But to me, it's 100% worth it, because the gameplay, and the thing is, you also get new abilities as well. You get new superhero identities. In these ones, you get a necromancer kind of identity in that Podcasa Bonita, or wow, self promo there, in that Casa Bonita thing, and then in the Titicaca, you have my favorite superhero persona that you can play as is the final girl in the horror movie, which it's just so wonderful. Like the DLC is so interesting, it's funny, it's challenging. You get to explore also different parts of South Park that you don't get to explore in the regular games. You get to visit Lake Titicaca, you get to visit Casa Bonita. So that's also really great. The world is expanded through the DLC, so if you do have a means of getting the DLC, I think it's 100% worth it. Because I think it's got some of the best combat, it's got some of the best humor in it, and some of the best like settings that you can play the game in.
Alright, so I don't know what DLC or any of those words mean. I just came to talk about my favorite vampire movie. Do you want to move on to the critiques?
Downloadable content. Downloadable content is DLC.
Alright, do you want to move on to the... What?
I said you ignorant slut.
Do you want to move on to the critiques of this game?
Let's move on to some of the critiques. Since you haven't actually played it, I don't know what you can contribute to this part at all, but, you know, I'll humor you. I'm very mean this episode.
It's okay. I mean, you kind of have the right to be. Usually I'm the one that's very, like, over-prepared and on top of it, and now I'm kind of just like, okay, Trilly, take it away, because I haven't played this fucking game.
I know, right? The roles are switched.
Yeah, like you said, I don't have any critiques. I don't know enough. I mean, I like the story for the most part. We'll probably get into that a little bit later, but as far as, like, gameplay...
That's a valid critique, because we were talking about this before we started recording. You do have some good critiques about the story. So.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess I could do that then, since I don't really have much to say about, like, the mechanics and
I gotta give you something.
Things like that, yeah. You gotta give me an Easter egg here or there. But yeah, I was telling Shirley earlier when we were talking about this that I prefer the Stick of Truth because I think the storytelling is stronger. And I really like this story, and the jokes is really all I'm here for. I'm not a huge game person. I prefer the Stick of Truth because I think the game and the way it tells the story and like the characters and the way they interact with each other is stronger. I don't mean to say that it's bad in the Fractured But Whole. I don't think that in any way. But I just feel like this Stick of Truth is really it stays true the whole time. It like so many of like the plot twists pay off, like Clyde turning evil. Spoiler alert. It's like such a huge, awesome like plot twist, and that whole thing at the beginning of Cartman banishing him actually pays off, and it leads to such a cool reveal. And then there's Princess Kenny again. Spoiler, betraying you at the end. I feel like so many of the threads, like the reason that those bosses are so cool and iconic is because they really set it up in the story, and I just felt like through my watch through, but I didn't play. I don't know. I felt like that. Yeah, they had big bosses, but none of them felt very iconic like they were in the first game. Because for the most part, the second game, the story is pretty strong, but like Shirley said, I think in the third act it does kind of fall apart because all of a sudden they have time travel now, and then Cartman's the mayor for some reason. There's like the Elmo Christmas plot. It's like it's a very odd choice. Like, and the story threads do come together technically, but I don't know. The payoff wasn't really there for me, and I didn't love it. Although the Mitch Connor joke at the end was funny.
Yeah, the thing is, it actually took Rachel mentioning it for me to kind of look back and realize that the story itself is kind of surface level. It doesn't have a whole lot of the twists and, crazy gags that the Stick of Truth had. The story, I agree, is actually stronger in the first game, but it took Rachel pointing that out for me to kind of think about it, because I can forgive the story in the Fractured But Whole because the gameplay is so fun. I kind of didn't really notice it, and that may not be the case for everyone who plays the game, but I totally agree, because looking back, there really isn't a climactic end. I was actually kind of surprised when I found out the game was over. Like, you do a final battle, spoiler, with Mitch Connor or whatever, and woohoo, he's gone, whatever. And the thing is, a lot of the story elements that are kind of wrapped up aren't wrapped up through gameplay like they are in the Stick of Truth. The Stick of Truth, your final battle dictates how the rest of the story ends. Whereas your final battle in the Fractured But Whole is very much just kind of there, and then cutscenes finish the story. You don't really have an active part in completing the story in this game, at least in my opinion. So I do agree, the story is a little bit lackluster, but I kind of didn't notice because I was having a lot of fun. I'll be perfectly honest.
Yeah, to the game's credit, I mean, they are both very similar, I would say, in like story structure and character motivation and jokes and things like that. Like I said, the Fractured But Whole is a bit weaker, but it's not like it doesn't really stand out as like being bad or anything. I don't think it's bad by any means.
It genuinely isn't a bad story, like in the slightest. I think it gets a little bit like messy here and there, but it's got a simpler story, I guess, with just the boys on either side, and they come together at the end, which is like the most important story element, really. But it does kind of get lost at the end, and it's not quite as climactic, but overall, I think the gameplay makes up for the story in a way.
Yeah, and it's also very similar to the first game, where it's mostly focused on the boys, and they have some other like deeper shit going on in South Park that's kind of fun to explore. And so that was a little bit of my critique of the storytelling, is that the second game felt kind of like, oh, well, Matt, you're like, oh, we have all this leftover stuff we didn't get to do in Stick of Truth. Now let's just use it in this game and kind of like thread it together and make it make sense. And to be fair, they did do that. It did make sense. Their storytelling was like so good. It got you from A to B, but I think that's part of why it fell apart a little bit for me. They were kind of trying to jam in everything that they didn't get to do in the first game.
A little bit, but I think I'm ready to like fully. I mean, we've done a little bit sprinkled here and there through our entire podcast, but the final comparisons between the two, I think it's perfectly fine to compare the two. Again, like I mentioned before, they're similar enough to have an enjoyable experience and to be able to relate one to another, but they have enough differences that they can be played independently of each other, and they are their own experiences. So that you will get a different experience. I really appreciate this game because it's not just trying to fix the problems that were in the Stick of Truth. It wasn't just kind of a rehashed Stick of Truth. It was its own experience, and it was improved in a lot of ways. So I really appreciate that aspect, because both of them, I didn't think there was a whole lot to fix in the Stick of Truth, but I think the elements that they added in the Fractured But Whole overall give it a more enjoyable experience. The level of difficulty is around the same, I'd say, though. So I think it's very playable for people like me who aren't like the best at video games, but you could also go at it as anybody who enjoys like a strategy game, like Phoenix Wright or Pokemon Turnstile based games. I think anybody can really play this and enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, I would agree with that, even though I haven't played it. Another aspect, I guess if we're comparing, another aspect I liked is that this game, it's similar in that both games are kind of have like, the boys are in two separate groups that are like opposing each other. But I like that the new one is that they're kind of different. The groups are different. And that the first one, it was like, oh yeah, obviously like Stan and Kyle are going to be on the same team. And then there's Cartman and Kenny's with him for some reason. And then it kind of explains like why they're, why the way it is that it is. But for some of them, they need no explanation because it's like Stan and Kyle are best friends. But in this one, it's like Stan and Kyle are on opposite teams, and then you can really
Kyle and are actually on the same team in this one.
Yeah, and that's a really, I think it's an interesting dynamic, and it makes for more interesting gameplay. And I really like the way it shakes out because there is so much more conflict, and I feel like in the second game, it makes it much more clear that the disagreement in this game has like spilled over into the boys' real lives, because like it's like Stan and Kyle are as good friends as they were, and Tweek and Craig like broke up over it, and I really liked the way they did that, because I felt like the Stick of Truth was very like, oh, we're all just pretending, like as soon as we stop playing this game, we're all gonna be like friends again.
Yeah, there is a lot of like character in both games, but especially in this one. Speaking of like the Tweek and Craig stuff, that is like hilarious. I love that battle so much. So there is like a character growth arc in this one that I don't think is quite there in Stick of Truth. So there is like some story elements that have improved in this game as well. Again, with the comparisons, really, it's not, the comparisons don't have to be about like which one is better. They're both going to be their own kind of unique experiences, but gameplay wise, they will be around the same type of game. It's not like you're going from a multiplayer shoot 'em up type game to all of a sudden you're just having strategy. They're very similar based on just the type of game that they are. The combat is the same, just like advanced in this game.
Yeah, I agree that we don't necessarily have to pit them against each other, but if we were going to, I would, even though I'm a Stick of Truth fan, I will say that the Fractured But Whole kind of has an up on it, because they have Tweek and Craig being local small town gays in this game, where they were both straight in the first one.
Big and laptop, like that alone, And the thing is, with this game, it does have the advantage of being the second game. They had more experience with it. They could see what they can improve on, and they also had more platforms as well, because the Switch had come out, which it is now. Stick of Truth can be played on this Switch as well, but it wasn't the original console for it. It came out when the PS3 was still around, so it had an advantage of it being the second game alone. So overall, I think in conclusion, they're both really wonderful games. They're it's not like you're going to get a drastically different experience with the combat style or anything, but you will get different story arcs and different little niches there that make both of them worthwhile to play.
Absolutely, I agree.
I think Matt and Trey, you could just, forget about the show. Just keep doing these games. They're pretty dope.
I would honestly love that.
I know. I think we just want to be spared from another, disastrous season, though.
Yeah, we can save this for our next ranty video, but long story short, we like this game. We also like the other game.
There are a lot of different platforms that you can play it on. And even if you can't play it, even if you don't like playing games, definitely give it, look at the cutscenes or watch a Let's Play, because the content as a South Park fan is also worthwhile. You're not just playing this game because it's a game. You would play this game because you like South Park, because both of them have excellent Easter eggs and tie-ins to the show.
Yeah, the show really does do a great job with that, especially for people like me who are just there for the Easter eggs and for the story and the jokes and the characters. It's like, well, I don't want to have to actually sit down and play a video game for this. I'm just going to watch someone else do it, but it really is worth watching a 4 or 5 hour Let's Play just for all the little Easter eggs for the show that I love.
Exactly. We're all in quarantine anyway. What else are you going to do?
True.
Well, thank you guys so much for listening, and let us know what you would like to hear next. We've got a Q&A coming up because we really love doing those. So send us. We've also talked about potentially doing a phone destroyer, which neither of us have played because I don't really do the mobile gaming life. I actually have to use my phone for work and shit. So it's not an expensive toy, unfortunately, for me. But I would love to kind of do research in the game because I really don't know too much about Phone Destroyer. Or if you guys want us to talk about literally anything else South Park related, we'll do that too. We're dying. I'm certain we're dying for content.
Certainly let us know if you want to see a Phone Destroyer review. And if you guys do, and you're clamoring and clanging for it, I promise I will actually play this game this time. So that's your incentive.
Rachel will actually play it, and I will be the one who sits and watches the Let's Plays.
Yay! Role reversal.
Role reversal!
Alright, well, thanks for hanging out with us again, guys. I think it's time for us to sign off. Bye, this is Rachel.
Smack that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, my zombie sheets or whatever. I guess since now we're a gaming channel, we have to end our videos like that. Hit up my Patreon. It doesn't exist at all. I'm unemployed. Help me out.
Alright, bye, guys.
Bye.